Uh-oh.
Yes, boy!
French toast is the exchange student that you have like a 3-week affair with.
Hey, we can see that you don't have pants on.
Somebody hit somebody with a pie. Do something.
Giovanni yelling we're out of time as we go off the air.
Giovanni yelling a lot of things tonight.
And welcome to the Mark It Down podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Mark It Down podcast. My name is Nick Cummings. James would be here, but he fell asleep. It is very, very late. It is currently 2:27 here on the East Coast, and we have just finished up watching 4 hours of AEW as we had Fyter Fest tonight, starting with the first 2 hours of Dynamite, immediately followed by 2 hours of Collision. It was a lot. I was struggling a bit towards the end, especially because the Mets are on and the Stanley Cup is on. Mets on the West Coast, so they're on lately. Stanley Cup started at 8:30, I think, and they went to overtime. Everything went late. Also, you can blame the Cup for why we had a 4-hour show tonight. But I am awake. I'm surprisingly pretty energetic. So I am here to review all 4 hours of Fyter Fest. It's going to be a little bit of a different show than normal. You know, usually I get a lot more in details of things, but there's 4 hours of stuff to cover. So I'm going to keep it tight, or as tight as I possibly can, and get through things as quickly as possible. Before we jump into everything, I guess we can quickly go into the comments and say hello to both Maria and Fernando. Good to see you guys, as always, especially this late in the evening. And then we hit up Johnny over here. Tony Khan may not put on good shows. I disagree with that, but he's a way smarter businessman than TKO and Triple H. We want Vince back. He will never. He released my childhood, Ron Cena, and they won't have no sponsors in the ring. Johnny, I'm going to disagree with you on a lot of things there. I think Tony Khan puts on great shows. I thought he put on a great one tonight, even though it was incredibly long, and also he obviously put on a great show at Double or Nothing. But I will agree. I will agree with the fact that I don't really enjoy what TKO is doing with WWE, the product, in terms of selling the sponsorships and stuff. I don't know if you saw they sold Slim Jim sponsorships for the tables that they're going to pull out for table matches and such, which is ridiculous in my opinion. No, Vince, I'm sorry. Whether or not you disagree with Triple H or TKO is doing, Vince, no, he is poison, that man. So that's all I have to say about that. All right, let's get into the show. Obviously, we are going to start with the big announcement of the evening, which came all the way right before the main event, which is that Kenny Omega and Kazuchika Okada will be having their 5th match in a winner-take-all match at All In. Now, this became official after Kenny's international title defense at the end of the 2nd hour of the show, which is basically the end of Dynamite. So we'll talk about that match in a bit. However, after the match, which basically started Collision, Okada came out. The two men got in each other's faces. They're raising each other's titles above each other's heads, and then they were shoving their titles in their face. And eventually, Okada slapped down Kenny's title, and Kenny just dropped his title and hit a forearm shiver to Okada's face. Okada was able to get Kenny down first by hitting him with a shot to the abdomen. And I'm telling you right now, Kenny is going to be selling that abdomen the way Matt Jackson was selling his back for 5 years. However, when Okada picked Kenny up for the Rainmaker, Kenny countered with a kick to the arm and then got Okada for the One-Winged Angel. But Okada fought out of it and scrambled back up to the ramp. I mean, look, obviously this is the big thing, and I really wish James was here to talk about it. I'm sure he will be on probably tomorrow to discuss it more in length. But this is the match that we have all wanted to see in AEW since Okada came to the company. They've been teasing it now since Kenny has gotten back, and especially now that he has won the International Championship. Okada has the Continental title. It is a huge deal that we are going. It's a winner take all. Now, I don't know if this means they're officially going to unify the titles or the winner is going to be carrying 2 of them. But either way, this is the match we all want to see. I'm obviously very excited to see it in a month or so, and I'm thrilled. I'm utterly thrilled, and I'm very psyched for the build as well, considering I never saw any of the Okada Omega matches live, really, and I saw the build for some of them, especially the latter ones, on BTE, but nothing where I was watching week in and week out the actual shows. So I'm excited for the build, and most importantly, I'm excited for James to start complaining that he's going to have to spend all this money to go to All In in a couple of months. All right, hey, you know it. What's going on, dude? Yep. Hello, fellow. Guess I have to drop the S off the end. Yeah, since you missed the top of the show, James fell asleep. And he woke back up and he was like, I don't know what happened. I'm going to bed. And I was like, okay, that's fine. All right, let's run down the show again really quick. I'll try to keep it very tight. It's late. I know everybody probably wants to go to bed. I want to try to catch the end of the Met game. We were in the 7th. But let's hit the top of the show where Will Ospreay came out for an in-ring promo led by Tony Schiavone. They quickly showed the recap of what happened after Dynamite last week, and they also showed this on Collision, where Will and Swerve actually came to blows backstage, where Will was trying once again to convince Swerve to work with Hangman. Will shut a car door in his face. Swerve pushed him. Will hit a forearm shiver. Swerve ended up throwing him into a barricade and told him to stop the bullshit. So anyway, Will basically talks about how Moxley is the real enemy in this situation, and that for just all one night, they need to work together to take him down, and then Swerve and Hangman can go back to killing each other. And he gets that the two of them truly hate each other, and neither wants to see the other hold the title, but that's not what is important. What is important is getting the title off of Moxley. And doing that, they can save AEW and destroy what he called the worst thing going for it. I think he said that Moxley is the reason that AEW sucks. And I would have put an ED at the end of that instead of an S, because AEW has been great lately, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, Will says that while he loves Swerve and he'd take a bullet for him, he'd take a bullet for AEW first. So if he's the one who has to stop Swerve in order to save the company, on I don't even remember, it's summer something or another, and it's gonna be another 4-hour show. God help us all, friggin' NHL Stanley Cup Finals. But he challenges Swerve to a match next week that later gets made official, and then Crew interrupts, and that results in Ospreay challenging Leo Rush, to a match tonight, and both matches are later made official. So good stuff from Ospreay, just furthers the story. But more importantly, we're getting Ospreay Swerve out of this next week. Super hyped for that match. Ospreay Swerve too. It's going to be another banger, I presume, especially because it is another 4-hour show and it is another branded show. Again, it's like Summer Fest or something like that. I imagine that match is going to absolutely fuck and probably be in the main event. You know what? I guess I'll just say this now. I couldn't agree more about Ty Mello and her return. And Fernando, yes, very excited about this match next week. That first one was awesome. And this one, I think it has very different stakes because, Will is more fighting for the soul of AEW and, even against his friend. And it goes to show how far he is willing to go in order to save AEW and save it in particular from Moxley and the Death Riders. After this, speaking of Moxley, we went to his match against Jay Briscoe, non-title. They started off first with the video package of Briscoe cutting a promo about why he wanted this match, saying that his son asked him why he had quit last week when he hadn't. But it's hard to explain that to I think it was a 5-year-old, as they said. So Jay challenged Moxley non-title to this match, and it was fine. Jay got busted open early. But it was basically what you expected, kind of slow, a little plodding at times. That's just the way Moxley works. He has a real grinded-on style, and Briscoe works well with that. He ended up bleeding pretty early in the match because of interference from Marina Shafir and Wheeler Yuta, who were involved throughout the match, which really gave Moxley a massive advantage. I think the big moment here was Briscoe hitting the J Driller, but he was so wiped that he couldn't immediately capitalize. It was a good 6 to 10 seconds before Jay actually got in a cover. It wasn't even that good of a cover, and Moxley becomes the first person to kick out of the Jay Driller in AEW. Now, granted, it was very protected, and a good way to do it, but still, pretty momentous moment for that move. Moxley ended up winning again via referee stoppage. He initially had the Bulldog choke on, but I think with the blood from Briscoe, he kind of had to adjust it. He ended up with a rear naked choke, and he ended up passing out Briscoe again. So, James, I can hear him yelling, why haven't we let Mark Briscoe win anything? And while he is, I don't want to say impervious to losses, he is a guy who can pretty much just immediately bounce back for them without it being too big of a deal. That being said, he has passed out now 2 weeks in a row. Not a great look for the guy. We got to get him back on track. Got to get him some wins. Hopefully we can do that soon. Let's hit back into the comments here. Maria calling either, I don't know if it was this match or Ospreay or both, a great opening to Dynamite and this a good hard-hitting match. And it was a good hard-hitting match. It was, again, a slow match, especially to a lot of the stuff compared to the rest of the card, especially with all the luchadors on there. But again, it's still, if you like that style, it was very good. I just think a lot of people are a little worn out from it now, just because Moxley has been champion and been doing this for, I think it's like 8 months now. So I can kind of see why people are upset with it, but I don't think it makes it a bad match, because I thought it was pretty good, actually. Maria also saying that Mark always bleeds in these, and she's surprised Moxley didn't. Surprisingly, Moxley hasn't bled that much recently. Everyone was always complaining about it, and he's kind of slowed it down. Fernando saying we all knew Mark was going to lose, and yes, that's true, but he still needs wins to keep some credibility up. If he continues to lose week in and week out, he lost at the pay-per-view. Now he's lost to Moxley 2 times in a row. Eventually it will kill your credibility, even if you are Mark Briscoe. And it being cheeky as always, what if the gunman is firing at Swerve and AEW at the same time? What you going to do, Will? That's I guess, 2 guns situation. And Will said he would stop the bullet for AEW before stopping it for Swerve. So there you go. All right, moving on after that match, we got another quick video package for Mystico. This comes up later with MJF, but they are pushing the hell out of him. It's Summer Blockbuster. That's the show, and he'll be on the show next week. Following this, we had Timeless Toni Storm and Mina Shirakawa versus Julia Hart and Skye Blue. Mercedes Moné was supposed to be on commentary, but instead she decided to have her own table brought out to her, complete with a steak, and which Taz goes, oh, that's a shoot steak, which is great. And she also had a glass of wine, and she took her headset off and just decided to take selfies and watch the match instead of actually commentating, which was a little disappointing. I would have liked to hear from Mercedes, but it works very well for the character. Anyway, this match ended with Toni and Mina winning. They hit stereo German suplexes and then stereo hip attacks in the corner, hitting it on both women. And then Toni forced Skye Blue to tap out to the TCM chicken wing. After the match, Toni then went over to Mercedes' table and kind of scared her away by just grabbing a piece of the steak and eating it with her hands, much to the disgust of Mercedes. So that was pretty funny. Not a lot of stuff I liked in this match. Just some subtle gay stuff for Pride Month. They showed a sign that said more gay wrestling in it, which was funny. We had another kiss from Toni and Mina. Good stuff. Hey, good stuff out of them for that, and just good wrestling in this match. Nice to see Skye Blue, getting back in gear a bit more. I think having some tag matches with Julia where she doesn't have to do everything but can get back in the rhythm of things is really going to help her. It was nice to see those 2 women back together as a tag team as well. And we got a little bit more on the women's tag team front, which it referenced earlier, but we'll talk about it more later. So really good match. I believe we're getting Toni against Julia next week at Summer Blockbuster. So that should be a good match as well. Maria calling it a great match. And how dare Timeless interrupt the dinner of the CEO? Not even only interrupt it, she stole her dinner. Didn't even pay a dime for it. That was a free $99 meal. After this match, we went backstage for what was supposed to be an interview with Will Ospreay, but he's immediately interrupted by MJF, who tells Ospreay to let the Hangman and Swerve stuff go because either he takes out Swerve and Hangman has a better shot at the title because Swerve won't get involved, or he somehow gets them to work together, and then Hangman definitely wins the title. And Ospreay has clearly proven he can't beat Hangman, so it would very clearly be in Ospreay's best interest to just let all of this go. Will says that MJF is just butting his head in because he knows that he himself can't beat Hangman and tries to go to leave. However, MJF then kind of sarcastically, almost threateningly, asks Will how his son is doing, which caused Will to spin around and put his hands on Max. But Max is quickly flanked by MVP, followed shortly by Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin, who come up behind Will. Will backs off, and the Hurt Syndicate leaves when they say that they have. MVP says that they have business elsewhere. Fernando is saying Toni versus Julia next week is going to be fire. I'm very excited. Oh, and Fernando posing perhaps MJF versus Will Ospreay at All In. That could be good. I believe that's a rematch. I could be wrong. It's late and my brain isn't working the way it usually does. But either that would still be a great match at All In. I was also thinking maybe since Hangman ended up winning the Owen, if it comes down to it, I feel like Swerve might need a little more revenge on the Bucks, and having Will as a partner could be a possibility as well. But I do think MJF versus Ospreay could be in the works. We'll see. That's a good prediction. And also saying he's guessing the CEO won't be leaving a 5-star review on the restaurant. Probably not, but Tony might. Denver is known for it's got some good restaurants. Denver, good crowd tonight too. By the way, I mean that was a long show and they held out for a lot of it. So shout out Denver. For the record, this is a throwback Mellow jersey, vintage. You can tell by the Reebok, vintage swingman. So good on that. All right. After this, speaking of the Hurt Syndicate, we had an official announcement from them in the ring where MVP asked the question that we've been asking on this pod for weeks. If AEW is where the best wrestle, then where are all the great tag teams? Because very clearly, they're either the founding fathers busy fucking with Tony Schiavone or do not exist or are hurt. Because shut up, buddy. He's still out. Anyway, MVP then declares that there's no one who can stand up to Bobby and Shelton, and he hands things over to MJF. Max says that he wants his AEW championship back, and in order to do so, he's unfortunately going to have to start wrestling more, which brings him, surprisingly, to Mexico. He then calls out Mystico, saying he's talking a bunch of shit about him, how Mexican people think Mystico is the best wrestler in the world, when very clearly Max is, and, clearly the best wrestler can't come from Mexico. He would come from America. Whole bunch of shit like that. Before saying that he's going to watch Mystico's match next week. And if MJF thinks he is worthy, he will challenge him to a match at Grand Slam Mexico in Arena Mexico, which MJF has wrestled at before. And he said he is the youngest person ever saw the building, which is, I thought, some great smack talk as well. After he finishes up, Speedball Mike Bailey, Kevin Knight, and Komander come out. They have a trios match coming up. And Komander calls out MJF for disrespecting him, Mystico, and Lucha Libre before saying some very unkind things in Spanish. Thank you, Excalibur, for translating the first half. I got most of it, and then I got most of the second half, but I'm not repeating those here, mostly because I forgot. And then Speedball and Knight call out the Hurt Syndicate for a trios match, which MVP just laughs off and declines, saying that they need to impress them in order to earn it, which then leads to the match that we have coming up in a second. Before we get to that, I will get back to the comments real quick. Maria saying they met at pay-per-view. Ospreay won. Yes, thank you, Maria, referring to MJF. I knew they did. I just couldn't remember the circumstances, but I am vaguely remembering. I think there was a Tiger Driver involved in there or something like that. Fernando also saying FTR should have answered the Hurt Syndicate and start the build-up for All In instead of Speedball and Kevin Knight. Maybe. I don't know. I'm actually kind of cool with Speedball and Kevin Knight challenging the Hurt Syndicate for the tag titles in the near future. Whether it's Jet Speed, I think they're calling them. They've actually gelled really well as a tag team early on here. And I know that's probably not what they initially came here to do, but they've been working well together. I think we saw it in the match I'm about to cover. And I don't know if that would be an all-in match, but they do have the triple threat next week, spoiler, against the Hurt Syndicate. So we'll see what happens there. And I don't know if they get it in a few weeks' time or we get somebody else building to all in. But FTR is just tricky because you hate seeing those guys lose. And I don't think they should beat the Hurt Syndicate just yet, but they are one of the few teams that could credibly challenge the Hurt Syndicate at the moment. And you want a credible challenger at all in. So it is really tricky how they're going to have to figure out the tag division and that match at all in for the Hurt Syndicate. Hopefully they can figure out something good. You know what? Also, real quickly saying, I'm actually going to give credit, AEW a little credit for the preparation for Mexico with the match tonight, letting the wrestlers get familiar with working with each other. Not only that, but the crowd getting familiar with them. Yeah, and I understand what you meant. Don't worry. But I do think that's been part of the great talent exchange with CMLL, and we've been seeing it a lot, and we're seeing it definitely a lot more recently. There was a bunch of guys when they were in El Paso last week from CMLL. I think they were mostly on Collision, but they stacked that card with the Luchadors and the CMLL guys. Also, too, because El Paso is a huge like Lucha Libre town as well. Sorry, ask Eddie Guerrero. And then, yeah, now you have them working a lot more shows. So I wouldn't be surprised if you saw a few more of a bunch of these guys in the coming weeks leading up to Grand Slam Mexico. And then also, too, don't be surprised if you see some highlights of AEW guys down in Arena Mexico just to, get them some heat down there as well. Maria's saying they are great talents, and they are. The CMLL guys have been awesome. Every time I see them, whether it's in AEW or even in New Japan, because they were at the pay-per-view in the beginning, I think it was Wrestle Dynasty or whatever it was, in the beginning of the year, they were great. They had basically their own Royal Rumble, and it was awesome. All right, let's keep it rolling into that Speedball Kevin Knight and Komander match. They were facing La Facción and Ingobernable. This match ended with Speedball hitting a time adventure on the Beast Mortos, and then Komander ran the ropes and bounded off of them to take out Rush and Delicico on the outside, and then Speedball tagged in Knight to hit the UFO onto the Beast Mortos to get the win. After the match, the Hurt Syndicate came back out. The MVP granted them the trios match next week before saying that they're going to get a preview of that ass whipping right now. However, Bobby and Shelton got sent to the floor by Jet Speed, and then when MJF headed down, he got taken out by Komander, and then the three men hit topes onto the Hurt Syndicate before MVP stepped in to break everything up. This match rocked. It was super fast-paced with all the, you had four Lucha guys running around. I know Rush isn't exactly a pure luchador, but he still wrestles a bit of a lucha style. And then obviously Bailey and Knight fit in so well with that. Very high pace, very a lot of high flying action, just great stuff all around from these guys. I do like. Does it suck that Mortos took the pin? Yes, because he is awesome. But every time he takes one, they make him look like, a beast, because it takes so many different moves to keep him down. And taking two finishers from two guys they seem to be building towards as perhaps a credible tag team challenger, that I think is a pretty big deal. And it just makes Mortos look strong. So I love this match. It's awesome. And I'm continuing to love seeing Speedball and Knight together. Jet Speed, just awesome tag team name. And hopefully they do get the tag title shot, which would probably involve them beating the Hurt Syndicate next week, but that's going to be interesting to see if it happens. We're going to make everyone great chemistry tonight. Yes, absolutely. Or at least in this match. Throughout pretty much everything, but especially this match. So good stuff out of these guys. Keeping it rolling. Next up, we had a quick backstage interview with Paragon and Danny Garcia. Adam Cole basically just asked Danny if he'd like to join them in a 4-on-4 match against the Don Callis family because everybody hates them. And Danny's like, yeah, I also kind of want your title, but sure, I want to take out the Don Callis family more right now, so I'm definitely in. After that, we came back from commercial with a backstage interview with the Patriarchy. Nick Wayne just got back from Best of Super Juniors, as did Kevin Knight. I should have mentioned that. They actually tied, I believe, in their respective block. But anyway, Christian comes out and says that while Nick had a great showing there, he didn't win. And you could just hear the disappointment in his sentence. And despite Nick's grueling schedule there, Christian wants to keep the momentum going, so he scheduled another title defense for Nick tonight. Nick jumps in saying the last one was light work, which, dude, it was Rhino, okay. But Christian says it's going to be much more difficult this time since it'll be in a 4-way match, and that gets made later tonight for Collision. After this, we went to one of the shortest segments of the evening, which was Platinum Max's 5-minute challenge. Max came out. He actually tried to get the referee to sign his petition that he is indeed the best wrestler alive, which was really funny. And then when he made the challenge, Powerhouse Hobbs came out, like in street clothes, funny enough. And Max actually made it all of 49 seconds because at one point he poked Hobbs in the eye, and then Hobbs just grabbed him and slammed him. It was almost looked like a rock bottom to the mat to pin him really, really fast. And that leads us to the main event of Dynamite, which was Kenny Omega versus Brody King versus Máscara Dorada versus Claudio Castagnoli for the AEW International Championship. This rocked. Kenny came out to the Final Fantasy theme. Brody King got busted open. I think maybe it was hard way, and it was gnarly. He had a lot of blood coming out. And this one was shoot. And I only bring that up because we got so worked last week by that women's tag match, the hardcore one. Harley Karen. Apparently she was working hurt, and that they wrote her out doing that. But I thought she lost her tooth or something. So, woman, I mean, I know she's a woman of many talents, but definitely a very talented actress. A couple of more things. I love Claudio somehow swung Brody, which was really cool. And then the finish of this match was Dorada took out Claudio and Brody on the outside. And then when he came back in, he went to the top and tried to hit a Hurricanrana on Kenny. However, Kenny caught him almost like in the position where, kind of when Will goes to the Styles Clash or AJ goes to the Styles Clash, but then flipped Dorada up on his shoulders, spun him around and right into the position for the one-winged angel, which he hit for the win. Obviously, there was all the aftermatch stuff with Okada and Kenny that we discussed, but like I said, this match was awesome, very fast-paced, good mix of some high-flying action with some power moves. You had a very long face-off with Brody and Claudio where they were just slugging it out for, it felt like about 3 minutes. And then Kenny or Dorada would try to interfere, and they would just get swatted away. So I very much enjoyed that. Dorada looked awesome in this. They were building up on commentary. He's basically like Mystico's successor is the guy who's going to lead CMLL, which is a pretty big deal. Side note, I did check. I think James said this last week. This is not Grand Metalik. I believe, if I read it correctly, this guy was Máscara Dorada, and then he went by something else, and then Metalik took Máscara Dorada, and then Metalik left, and then he got Máscara Dorada back in a match. Yeah. So, but no, he looked awesome in this. Shouts to him. Yeah, and then obviously Kenny, everything Kenny does is perfect. So great match. Highly recommend. If you're gonna watch one match of all of this tonight, I would go with this or the trios match. These were the two, I think, best matches of the evening. Granted, after this, I started getting a little tired, so it was what it was. It's saying we got to get Kenny a new entrance. Again, dude, I don't understand. He has two of the best in the company. Battle Cry rocks. And then when he has a big time match and he comes out to that Final Fantasy Town theme, which, for those of you who don't know, was done by the Final Fantasy composers. So it wasn't like he just was like, hey, make me something that sounds like Final Fantasy. No, he went to those guys. And I just, it's something we're just going to have to disagree about. You know it. I'm sorry. And then Maria agreeing with me that, yeah, the luchadors can get a little confusing sometimes, especially when like they're switching mask ups and stuff. Like we were discussing last week, like the Mystico Okada coming back thing. Like he wasn't actually Mystico because they gave it away, and then he was Mystico 2.0, and then Mystico 2.0 either changed his name or left, and then became Mystico again. It's a fustercluck. Yeah, so that was Dynamite. At least it's, you know, the first 2 hours of it, and then we bled into Collision. As I mentioned, Kenny and Okada came to blows, and then after that settled down, we quickly went backstage to Ricochet, who declared his intention to scout the matches for tonight. Excuse me. Damn, I've been rolling there too. Anyway, Ricochet announced his intentions to scout the matches for tonight, looking for people to join him, people who he thinks are willing to follow him, listen to him, and help him win gold. That led into Will Ospreay versus Lio Rush, the match that was made at the top of Dynamite. I actually thought it was very interesting that they put the Ricochet promo right in front of this, but he, especially because we all kind of thought Crew would be a good options for him, but he actually didn't come out or do anything for this match. The match itself was very good. You know, you can kind of tell what you were going to expect with this because, you know, Will and Leo are both high flying for the most part. I know Will's kind of toned that back a bit, although he is still the aerial assassin. But Leo is just a pinball going around that ring, and he definitely showed it tonight. These guys actually had very good chemistry, and it was, this was just a really good, fast-paced, high-octane match. It ended after Will kicked out of a frog splash. Rush got caught trying to use his chain that Action Andretti had handed him while the ref wasn't looking. And then when the ref took it and tried to throw it out of the ring, Will just took advantage. I mean, not that he did anything wrong, but he just quickly grabbed Leo and got him in the Styles Clash and hit that for the win. After the match, Action Andretti jumped in the ring for the double team, and he helped Rush hit an assisted neckbreaker on Will. And then that led to Hangman Adam Page coming out to chase them off, hitting Andretti with a shot to the jaw for good measure. Ospreay then left the ring, and it seemed he had a bit of a shoulder thing. Like, I'm assuming he was selling. I'm hoping he was selling that neck breaker. But that's something to look out for next week in the match against Swerve. As I was saying for this match, really, really good high octane stuff. Love that Will won the Styles Clash. And if you like that type of fast paced stuff, if you really like Lio Rush, this is a match he really shined in against Will. Just because this Will is a guy he, again, great chemistry with, worked really well with. So definitely see this if you are a Lio Rush fan. Maria's calling for a new faction. Yes, for Ricochet. I'm curious to see what he does, and we'll talk a little bit more about him later because he was on commentary for the Ring of Honor television match. But I do think these guys would be great with him. They could, not that Leo needs the mentorship, but I think Action could use another guy in his corner who's been around the block. Ricochet has definitely been there. Although it is funny, I'm saying this about a guy who was always talked about having no personality, but he finally found one, and I think that could use some mentorship. But they are definitely guys, I think, who would betray him pretty quickly, as opposed to maybe somebody a bit later in the show. You know what? Throwing out video game references, I don't know. Road of Resistance entrance. I've heard of the game, but I'm not. I stick to like Halo and Rocket League. I'm a big Xbox guy. Maria also suggesting Bucks are going to ruin Swerve versus Will. That is an option. I know I would hate for that to go to DQ just in general, but as I mentioned earlier, I do think Swerve versus Will Swerve and Will against the Bucks at All In is a very viable option for that pay-per-view. So if that I think that's a possibility, Maria. That's a good call. And can we start a GoFundMe for Ridley to get a real chain? Well, you want to be knocking people's heads in with real diamonds? Trust me, he's got the real one that he probably wears out when he cuts promos, and then they got the fake one for when he's got to hit somebody in the head with them. Trust me. Reminds me of the time my man Javi Baez lost like $80,000 worth of diamonds diving head first in the home plate to win a game for the Mets. And like all of his like chain broke and his earring fell out. And yeah, it was just like under the dirt in the grass, and they only found like a couple of pieces. And yeah, it was like 80 grand or something. I miss Javi. All right. Anyway, as I was saying, after the Hangman save, Will left, and Hangman ended up grabbing a mic. He says or starts by saying that if Ospreay is going to have his back, then he's going to have Ospreay's, which got much applause. But he then says that he is his own man and he doesn't need any help to win the title, whether it's from Ospreay, which, while he's grateful, he doesn't need it, or from, and especially from one of the worst men on the planet, the type of man who threatens another man's family for his own glory. Hangman then makes another promise, referencing the one he made last week, saying that he will never accept help from Swerve Strickland. Page then says that he's going to win the title at All In and, hyping the crowd up and everything. But as he's doing this, Moxley sneaks into the ring behind him. The two men then have a very long stare down. And as they do, the Death Riders slowly filter in around the ring. However, Ospreay returns with a couple of chairs. Very slowly, obviously. He just had that grueling match and got the shit kicked in to help Hangman defend himself. And Moxley decides that he's going to advance towards future victory and calls back the Death Riders. Good promo on a Hangman. It was, I think, mostly just kind of A, get him on the show, and B, help strengthen the on-screen alliance between him and Ospreay. So I think it worked very well. He didn't say anything crazy new, but him promising that he will never accept help from Swerve is an interesting tidbit, as we are seemingly building toward them at least having some sort of enemy of my enemy is my friend type of thing heading into All In. Maria asking, I thought Javi played for the Cubs. He did, and then the Mets traded for him, I want to say 2021. We actually traded Pete Crow Armstrong, who was out on the Cubs and raking. And then, so the Mets had him for about half a season, and then they let him go. And he's actually now in Detroit, where on a pretty big contract, where he was playing terribly for the Tigers. But then for some weird reason, they moved him to the outfield this year, and he's raking again. So good for Javi. He's Puerto Rican. I'll always root for him. Say the umpire stuffed Javi's jewels in his diamonds. Yeah, maybe. I mean, those guys don't make as much as you think they do. Just dusting off the plate, nothing to see here. Well, maybe. I mean, there was a lot of chaos. The Mets did. It was a walk-off. We did win that game. Even funnier part was it was the first end of a doubleheader. So they played a whole nother game, and they still couldn't find any of the things. And Maria is saying there was a lot of Will Ospreay tonight. And indeed there was. But I think, A, that is a good thing because Will is basically – he's pretty much the face of the company. And if he's not, it's him, Hangman, and Swerve are the three faces of the company. I know Kenny is obviously up there as well, but these are younger guys who are going to be around for a long time, and they are at the top of the card right now. So, yeah, they're, I think, the faces of the company. So that's why I was glad we got a lot of Will tonight, especially since we didn't get too much Hangman, and we didn't really actually see Swerve at all outside of the flashback to last week. Okay, after this, I have to go find the place again. Yes, we went to a backstage interview with that carny piece of shit, Don Callis, and his family, where Don accepted the challenge from Paragon for a match later tonight. And then he also called out Bandito and the Outrunners for a trios match so that it will be the Outrunners can be taken out, by Fletcher and Takeshita. And then he also called in my man Hechicero to take care of Bandito. Always good to see him. Super psyched he was on the show. After this, we got another match, which was FTR against Atlantis Jr. and Templario. I'll go to that in a second. Excuse me. Jumping to the end of this, as Templario went for a suplex over the ropes on Cash, Dax pulled his legs out, and that allowed Cash to basically fall on Templario, and Cash kept him down for the 3 count. It did look like Dax was supposed to kind of cheat, maybe help hold Cash's feet down or hold Templario's feet, whatever it was. But I think they were too far from the ropes to make it believable, so he didn't do it. Other than that, this match was good. It was interesting because it was such a clash of styles. Obviously, no flips, just fists, FTR, against 2 very skilled luchadors in the ring. But they played off each other great. I thought another word we're going to use in this word a lot tonight. Good chemistry out of these guys. Not my first experience with Atlantis Jr. and Templario, but definitely the most in-depth one I've had, and I really liked what they showed tonight. And I look forward to seeing more from them in the future. Hopefully, we can get a lot of these guys on the card, whether it's at Gramsa in Mexico or also at Forbidden Door. I'm hoping we see some more CMLL guys at Forbidden Door this year. I know it's in England, but still, like, they do promote it as a, I know it's really AEW and New Japan, but CMLL is, they're on the poster. And I would like to see them getting a couple more matches than they have been in the past Forbidden Door. So hopefully we get more of these guys on both of those cards. After this, we went to that Don Callis family match, the trios match. It was Takeshita, Fletcher, and Hechicero, as I said, against Bandito and Los Outrunners. So from Mexico Beach, they came out wearing pink masks, and they were calling themselves Senor Magnum and El Turbo. And honestly, this was like 11 o'clock or close to it at this point, and it was the kind of the thing I needed to laugh at to get me back into the show. I was like, these fucking idiots. And I mean that respectfully. They were great. We had that carny piece of shit Don Callis on commentary. He was wide awake because he was cooking everybody. They're also in Denver, so it's at least 2 hours earlier. So it's only like 9 o'clock there. Either way, this match ended with Takeshita and Fletcher taking out Los Outrunners with a couple of Germans. And then they both hit their finishers, with Fletcher being the one to hit the Brain Buster to get the pin fall victory. Highlight of this match was El Turbo walking the ropes with Hechicero and doing the arm drag, which was funny because he was just like, I love watching these guys because it's them just, making fun of old, 1980s WWF stuff, or not even just WWF, but mainly Hogan and Road War, not Road War. Who am I thinking of? Ultimate Warrior, yeah, and shit like that. And it's so funny watching them do it, and him just cheesing the crowd while he's up on the turnbuckle getting their walk. It's always so funny. So this was mostly just an entertaining match, and to really get the bad guys over on the Outrunners, and then maybe set up something with Bandito and Hechicero. They had taken each other out on the outside as the match ended. I didn't quite catch what ended up happening for that to occur, but I would love Hechicero versus Bandito for the Ring of Honor World Title. Would be awesome, and that could be something they set up for Grand Slam Mexico. So that'd be a really cool match. We'll see if they end up doing that. After this, we got a video package for the women's tag team street fight last week. Obviously, we had Bane and Penelope Ford win, I mentioned earlier, and they took out Harley Cameron for the dub. And we then cut backstage to Bane and Ford. They're shown, and Bane says that Anna should have just bowed down after she saw what they did to Anna last week, what they did to Harley last week. And then we see a downed Anna at their feet. Bane picks her up and brings her to the stage where she's going to hit Fate's Descent. But then Penelope has the idea to do it off the stage. And as Bane walks over there and goes to do it, the music of Ty Mello hits. And as it mentioned earlier, she made her return, attacking Penelope with a lead pipe. And then there's a bit of a weird standoff between Bane and Ty before security comes rushing out. And there's a big pull apart. And it was kind of awkward because each woman's partner was on the other side of the security, so they kind of had to like awkwardly circle around as security was holding them back. But it was pretty funny, and I do agree with what it said earlier, where I would have liked to see a little more of a return for Ty. You know, she has been beloved since she's been in the company, and you know, it would have been nice to get her a little bit more of a pop, or not even more of a pop, just give her a little more time. You know, this was like a 30-second thing. We barely had time to be like, yeah, Ty's. I was like, yeah, Ty's back to security. I was like, all right, come on, give her a minute. She's been gone for forever. So, yes, welcome back, Ty Mello. But and so hopefully next week she gets a little more time with everything to allow her to reintroduce herself. That being said, I have to imagine another street fight's coming. Anna and Ty are probably the best two women they got at the street fights. So let's go. Because in my opinion, the best four are those two, Penelope and the Bunny, but Bunny's not there anymore. So that leads to that. All right. After this, we had another backstage interview. This time it was with Anthony Bowens and Billy Gunn. Bowens declares this the Pride of Pro Wrestling Month, because for those of you who don't know, it's Pride Month. And then he actually challenged Kyle Fletcher to a match next week, saying he wants to, you know, do it big for Pride of Pro Wrestling Month. So that's that. So we'll see that next week. After this, we had our Ring of Honor Television Championship 4-way title match. So it was Nick Wayne, Sammy Guevara, AR Fox, and Lee Johnson. And this was the match that Ricochet came out scouting for new. I called them followers in my notes. That seems about right. I would also like to quickly shout out Blake Christian's Roki Sasaki Nippon League jersey. That was sick. Good on you, Mike. Anyway, this match ended where after Fox took out Johnson and Sammy on the outside with a tope, he went back up to the top for a swanton, but Wayne was able to get his knees up, and then he hit a kick to the head, and then he looked like, I thought it was a fisherman's buster. Toni talked over Nigel's call of it. I did hear buster, and Nick won with that, but it was one of those things where he put AR Fox through his own legs, grabbed it, and then hit the buster. So really cool move. I think it's going to be one of his finishers now. I feel like he's been using it a bit more recently. I just got to get the name down on paper to remember it. If any of you guys remember what it is, I'd appreciate it. But this match was really fun. It was, 4 high flyers in the ring, a lot of diving around. It kind of almost felt like the trios match earlier, just in a 4-way setting. So you combine the 4-way match and trios match, there you go. But yeah, it felt a lot like that, where it's just a bunch of dudes flipping around and just taking each other out with a bunch of high octane moves and high flying moves. So a fun match overall. Right guy wins here with Nick Wayne. And Christian had teased something about Kip Sabian having something in store for Nick, but there wasn't really too much of the Christian shenanigans after the match he's been doing with the belt. He just kind of gave it back to Nick, and they cut away pretty quickly. So there is that. When Maria saying Wayne, Leo, and Andretti are joining Ricochet. That's an interesting trio. I thought of the guys in this match, it would be Lee Johnson, who actually might be joining Ricochet, perhaps even with Blake Christian, which I think it's a possibility. I mean, they're doing less on TV, or let me rephrase. They're doing less on AEW TV because they've been together a lot down on Ring of Honor than Crew are. Crew is a pretty established team at the moment, and they don't necessarily need to be put with somebody. They could be, but I don't know. Christian and Lee, because they're not really on AEW television, if they want to get them back on or get them on a more regular basis, since they've been showing up a bit more in the last 6 months or so, putting them with Ricochet, I think could actually work pretty well. And they kind of fit his vibe a bit, especially Blake Christian, because he's a schmuck. Saying back in my day, there was a move called the Brainbuster. Yeah. That's Kyle Fletcher's finisher, and it's awesome, especially when he does it on the turnbuckle. And Maria says, I don't understand what's going on with Christian Cage. I'm assuming you mean Brian Cage is hurt. That's a good question. I mean, they're really at this point just building towards Nick turning on him, but they're really, really slow playing it. And the bigger question is, when do we do the Copeland reunion? Because how that plays out, or when they want to do it, is really going to determine how, at least I think, how everything with Christian and Nick Wayne plays out, and then how everything with Christian plays out in terms of, is he going face? Does Copeland join him as a heel? And either way, we have to get those guys there at some point, especially considering the fact that Nick Wayne. So here's the thing. I think Nick Wayne turns face on Christian. Like Wayne turning heel on Christian is going to be very difficult because Christian is just such a dick to him. So that turn will free Christian up, but there's no reason for him to say, go recruit Copeland to help, like, unless you turn Copeland heel, which seems difficult because it seems like the story would be, and Maria mentioning where I was kind of going with this, Copeland and Christian versus FTR. Now, I agree with you. I don't think there's enough time for that to happen at All In. I don't even know when it's going to happen now, but I do think that is the match that they do eventually build towards. Just a matter of A, when does Copeland want to come back, and B, how the hell do we turn Christian face? Which is possible, but he has been such a great scumbag for the last few years that it's going to be incredibly difficult. It's saying he's going. Ricochet is going to change his name to Rick O'Shea, 80s British pop star. I'm speaking into existence. First of all, he would be an Irish pop star. O apostrophe belongs to the Irish. Second of all, yes, I will take that, all of that, the rest of that, please. It'd be hilarious. It'd be really funny, like, if he did a bit, like, where he came out with, like, hair and was, like, an Irish guy for a day. I wouldn't take offense to that at all. I think it'd be funny as hell. Halloween, here we come. After this match, we got another one. It saw the in-ring AEW debut of Thekla. She faced, I think it's more of a Thekla. That H is a little more silent than I'm used to pronouncing. But either way, she faced off against Lady Frost. Nice to see Lady Frost in the ring. She actually goes down to CMLL a lot and does a great job down there. So good for her. And it was nice to see her, even though she kind of got her ass handed to her in about 5 minutes. But she didn't look terrible. Thekla, on the other hand, looked awesome. Her character is awesome. She just had, I hate using the word because the youth have ruined it, but she does have an aura about her, a presence. Like, she's both kind of creepy, but not like Julia Hart, Sky Blue creepy. She's like creepy, but then she's also like, you just see the violence behind her eyes, and you really saw it tonight. This match ended with Thekla going from her spider walk into flipping over and then just cutting Frost in half with a spear before locking in her death trap submission hold and forcing Frost to tap out. And then after the match, Thekla reapplied the hold, but this time she put her fingers in Frost's mouth, and she got some long-ass nails, so that shit must have hurt. And then Queen Aminata came out to make the save. I will just jump and say that Aminata, when we came back from commercial, had a quick backstage promo and challenged Thekla to a match next week, saying that she is the African queen, and when they in Africa they just stomp spiders when they see them, which I thought was a pretty funny one. But I'm very hyped for Thekla. I'm interested to see how they push her, but I guess I'll briefly talk about this here because my heart is currently broken and it is relevant. But whatever they're going to end up calling Mariah May, debuted in NXT last night. And while I'm very disappointed and can talk, I'm just disappointed as an AEW fan. I just loved Mariah in AEW. Obviously, her dream has always been WWE, and I'm not mad at her for going. I'm not going to be one of those tribalistic fanboys, but would have loved to see her stay in AEW. I hope she does very well in WWE. But on the flip side of things, that did, I think, leave a gaping hole in the women's division of AEW. But Toni has done a great job. I think he went out, signed Mina Shirakawa, he signed Megan Bayne, and now he signed Thekla. And those are three big-time players that you could immediately insert into the top of the card. Obviously, we saw that with Mina, where she very quickly got that AEW Women's Championship match against Toni by pinning Toni, nonetheless. So while I think there was a huge loss in the women's division, I do think that Toni did a great job filling in some holes I think that have been left. Plus, that division is still crazy deep with women that we haven't even seen in a while. So, like, Thunder Rose has barely been on recently, and she's still a top woman. Deonna Purrazzo, I know her back isn't 100%, but a woman who is a great wrestler that could definitely be, even like mid card. And we barely see. I think she's been running around more on Ring of Honor lately. But either way, the women's division is very, very deep, and Toni just made it deeper, even with the loss of Mariah May. After this, we had the announcement for Kenny versus Okada at All In. And before we get to the final match, I'll just run through our comments here. It's saying that the Ricochet character would work for St. Patrick's Day. I'll allow it. Halloween is sooner, though. We're saying that Jamie Hayter and Thekla are going to have an excellent match. I'm very, very hyped for that. You're right. That is going to be awesome. I'm very much looking forward. I didn't even mention Jamie Hayter and how deep this women's roster is. So it's going to be great. And that match is going to slap. Maria also saying Frost should have more wins. She is one of those women who they don't have Dark anymore, or even Rampage, to be honest, but especially Dark, where you could go and build up your win count. And I know they don't show the win-loss record anymore. I guess they do still keep track, because I did forget to mention this after the FTR match. Big Stoke was talking shit about how FTR is the most winningest. You don't have to say most winningest. They are the winningest tag team, in AEW. Damn, it is late. I am tired, but I'll get through this. So they are still counting wins, but she's just one of those women where she's very good. Honestly, I think she's great in the ring, but there's just so much talent ahead of her, and she ends up in these positions where she ends up having to put very talented people over. But again, she does great in CMLL, and I think she's a great foreign ambassador for AEW. So at least she's got that going. And also, yes, I was very happy to see Queen Aminata. And yes, she is not going to win next week. You're not beating Thekla in her second match. Maria also then saying about Mariah May, AEW made her a star and she just walked out. She better hope WWE really does something with her. I'm just saying. There's a small bitter part of me that does agree with that. But I just think more of, she did use AEW to get to WWE, but she left, on a very high note, arguably match of the year against Timeless Toni Storm in the Hollywood ending. So you had that. She left on very good terms. It wasn't like she demanded a release or anything. Her contract was just expiring. And that's where she wants to be. And if that is her dream job, her life goal, who am I to get mad at somebody for going to take their dream job just because I don't get to watch her wrestle on a specific show? Like, it is what it is. Do I personally think it was her best move? I don't know. Looking at the landscape of WWE, maybe not. Just because, they have a lot of blondes. And I hope she doesn't get caught up in comparisons to like Tiffany Stratton and there's apparently a lot of blondes on NXT, but I think she has the mic skills and she definitely has the wrestling skills to truly stand out, and she just has a presence about her that I just think a lot of those other women don't have. I saw somebody say this in one of the threads of Reddit about Mariah's debut, and it was saying on this topic, like, Tiffy is like a real life Barbie doll. We even saw that with her WrestleMania entrance, whereas Mariah just is like, she's the glamour, and she's a completely different woman, and she's from England, which also helps her stand out more. So I think she'll be okay. I think she's too talented not to be. And I also, there's a small part of me that kind of hopes her contract isn't that long so she can see where she is in however many years and maybe come back to AEW. Not to mention, she's still only like 26. So even if she's there 5 years and she wants to leave and come back to AEW, she'll still be 31. Like, she'll still be in her prime. So I'm not bugging. I hope she does great there and she gets everything she wants. Saying what's good to Dev. What's going on, dude? Once again, you caught us a little bit towards the end here. I'm just about to cover the main event of Fyter Fest Collision, but it's always good to have you on board. And speaking of that match, that was the Paragon. Yeah, I said it right the first time. And Daniel Garcia against the Don Callis family match. This match ended where after Adam Cole hit Rocky Romero with a super kick, he then hit Lance Archer with one while he was on the apron. And then Adam Cole lowered the boom on Rocky and picked up the win. I'm going to be honest, I didn't really pay a lot of attention in this match. I was trying to A, get this ready, B, trying to wake James up, and C, I was tired, man. It was 4 straight hours of wrestling, commercials, everything, as opposed to like the AEW pay-per-views where you're up and you're hyped the whole time. This, I don't want to say petered out because I'm sure this match was great. I just didn't watch the whole thing. I do apologize. But it seemed like a pretty solid way to end the night. And listening to Callis and Daddy Magic argue on commentary was probably pretty funny. So that kept me somewhat intrigued, but it is what it is. Just saying, I don't know when you guys are on. Well, we are on every Wednesday after Dynamite and then after the pay-per-views. And hopefully people start covering some more WWE stuff, but we'll see. One more comment from here saying, I don't see WWE giving her wins over the top. WWE girls just expects them to just feed Mariah to them. And I disagree, man. I really do think that her talent is going to carry her very far in that company. I do really think she is that good. Put her up against, I know they're all on the main roster right now, but you put her up against some of those Joshis. You put her up against Io. You put her up against Kyrie. Put her up against Julia. They've had matches already, so they're comfortable together. Like, she's going to get over so fast with her ring work. And I do think her promos are great. So I know in AEW, Mariah didn't do a whole lot of in-ring promos. A lot of it was backstage, but I enjoyed them, and she'll be down at the Performance Center and have a chance to practice her promos both in classes and then in front of the live crowds on NXT. So that's basically her only weakness, and she's still actually pretty decent at it. So I have a lot of faith in Mariah as a talent. I can see you having a little bit of trepidation about WWE booking them, but I think at minimum Shawn Michaels knows what the fuck he's gonna do and do it well with Mariah. A lot of people are already like, oh, they took the title off of Stephanie Vacar so she can go to the main roster, and they're just immediately going to put it on Mariah. I don't know about that. I'd love to see it, but just for Mariah's sake. But I do think she's going to be portrayed very well in NXT, and then we'll see what happens on the main roster. Hopefully she can make it there. All right, but that was Fyter Fest. My overall thought was it was long. It was a long show. I mean, it's 4 straight hours of TV wrestling, and I kind of made that distinction a minute ago, but even then, still less commercials than your typical WWE pay-per-view. But no, I think we got some really good stuff out of this. Obviously, the big news once again is going to be the announcement that Kenny Omega and Kazuchika Okada will be having a winner-take-all match at All In, their 5th singles match ever, the first one in AEW, and that is unbelievably hype. But speaking to Kenny, if you didn't watch all of this tonight because you got tired, go back and watch that 4-way match for the International Championship. It was awesome. Go back and watch that trios match between LFI and Jet Speed and Komander. That was a great match. If you're looking for something else, I actually would recommend the Ring of Honor TV 4-way match. It is also now the summer. My AC is back in, which means Nick seeing bugs fly on his screen is back. But yeah, I think this was a card really set towards a lot of good matches. I think we got a lot of good matches. And even then, we still got enough promo work that helped drive some stories along, namely the Ospreay Hangman Swerve stuff. So looking forward to all of that. Very much looking forward to the Swerve Ospreay match next week. And I am hopefully I get some help next week, but 4 hours back-to-back weeks is going to be rough. Thank God I have time to sleep. All right, last things from here before we check out. WWE tactics are usually getting the other company's talent to job them out. That's the history of what it is. I read that poorly. That's on me. Yeah. I think, you say that, right? And I understand, you look at something like the invasion angle, and yeah, obviously they jobbed everybody out. Sometimes they would bring people over from TNA and sometimes job. But if you look recently, Ethan Page didn't get jobbed out, or he does the job sometimes when he has to, but that's kind of his role. He's a mid-card guy. But I don't think Ricky Stark / Ricky Saints has been jobbed out. I know he just lost the title, but he's going to the main roster already. So, I wouldn't say him. Stephanie Vacara and Julia didn't immediately get jobbed out, and they're both on the main roster now. So I think within NXT it's different. You want to talk main roster? I got you. Like, I understand where you're coming from. But in this first little while here, while Mariah's in NXT, she's gonna be fine. When she moves up, we'll check back in then, and we'll have the same discussion and see what happens. All right. On that note, I would like to thank everybody for staying up with me tonight and watching me here at the Mark It Down podcast. Because you've lasted this long, and I did as well, I'd appreciate it if you'd like to subscribe. If you like the video, let us know that you're enjoying what we're doing here on the pod. And if you subscribe, continue to get all the great shows here on the podcast. I have to imagine James is doing the Gym Pack Zone tomorrow. I also imagine he's probably going to put something somewhere, whether it's here on the channel, on social medias, which I'll get to in a second, talking about Kenny Okada 5, because this is his dream. And odds are he's going to be able to go see it now. So he is going to be super excited. So keep an eye out for all of that stuff. So you definitely don't want to be subscribed here on the channel. And then obviously we'll be back here next week, probably around the same time after the 4 hours. And occasionally we do some WWE stuff. So subscribe so you can see that. And we cover all of the major pay-per-views as well. Speaking of our social media stuff, if you're here on YouTube and you want to check us out on any of our socials, with Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, or Blue Sky, links are in the description below. If you're watching over on Facebook or Twitter and you want to follow us on some other stuff, Twitter is @marketdown_pod. Instagram is @marketdownpod. YouTube.com/marketdown3665. Our Blue Sky, which I feel like I keep messing up every week, is @marketdownpod.bsky.social. Hey, I haven't been getting it right. Or you can just search Market Down Podcast on any of our social media platforms. All right. Cool. Dev, thank you for the like. We appreciate it. You know it. Thank you so much for your compliment. May the force be with you as well. So my name is Nick Cummings. Thank you so much for watching me at the Market Down Podcast. Go to bed, everyone. It is 1:35 in the morning. I'm going to go see if the Mets won. I hope they did. Bye, guys.